Welcome to Logical-NDE. My name is Emily, and it is my pleasure to narrate the near-death experiences of those who have seen the other side. If you are new to our channel, welcome. For our regular viewers, please sit back and enjoy today's episode.
Hello, everybody. I'm Janet Tarantino, and I've had 3 near-death experiences. But what I didn't realize until the third NDE, that I had many more spiritual events throughout my life. When the Creator embraced me during that third near-death experience, he showed me moments of my life. When he showed me these moments, they played out in mini movie form. And while I watched the films, God said, these moments matter. Some of these include moments from my past, but some were moments that hadn't happened yet. So during my first NDE, which I discounted, I saw my guide, who is a watcher angel, and I saw a beautiful young woman who seemed to come riding in on the most beautiful music I've ever heard. And during that NDE, the first one, I learned about soul contracts. In the second NDE was a severe car accident where I was saved by divine intervention. And in that one, I learned that our prayers were answered. I called for help, and I got an angel that came to help me. But for this brief talk, I'm going to focus on my third NDE, which required me to understand my first 2 NDEs and moments from my future that, far out future actually, that hadn't happened yet. And they held tremendous insight about life and heaven. So let's go to the third NDE. My husband Gavin and I owned and lived on a ranch. We've been there for many years prior to this experience. And this particular fall season, I developed an allergy that I'd never had before. And I thought it would go away as the seasons changed, but it didn't. One day, after the animals were fed and the chores were done, I went inside and took some decongestants to clear up my nose and my throat so I could breathe better. But this night, the congestion was really bad. I went to bed, and I propped 3 pillows on top of each other, so I'd be laying at a 45-degree angle because I could breathe better that way. And I fell asleep with my hands clasped over my tummy like I always did. That's the usual way I slept. But during the night, my chest started to hurt because my breathing had been cut off and I couldn't sit up and gasp for air. So I reached for my husband. I called out for him, but he didn't respond. He continued to sleep. Then I was suddenly out of my body, and I was looking down on my husband and I in the bed below. And I was connected to the universal consciousness from that moment. And I felt like I had taken the best and biggest breath that I'd ever had. And I felt free, absolutely free. And I felt pure tranquility, peace, and love. It was like bliss. And as I floated there, I was up at the ceiling height, by the way, at this time. And I saw a silver cord float by in slow motion in an atmosphere of no gravity that went by very slow as it drifted over in front of me. And at that time, I observed a ball of light approaching off to my right. Let's say my body was in bed, and it was off to the body off to the right, but I in spirit was above the body looking down, and I seemed to be, like a doctor next to the bed. I was sideways looking down on the body, and the light was coming toward the room. It was kind of coming in a slight S-shaped curve, but it was moving slow at that time because it was so far off. And then I wasn't concerned about that because I was more interested in what was going on down at my physical body. As my physical body laid in bed, I could see a shimmering blue essence, the color of the sky on a beautiful day, lifting out of the physical legs. It lifted out of the feet, then the ankles, and then the shins and up to my thighs. And I watched this lip bubble up out of my body. When it fully left the body, it drew up toward me, and I became a different form, because I had been watching my spirit body, my blue spirit body, leave the lower half of my body, and now it had drifted up to me, and I was creating a new form, which was in the shape of a bubble that glowed. And I was sitting in a wand of cushy, it sounds silly, it sounds odd, but it felt like a cushy wand of love, and I was sitting in it, just like a wand that kids would blow bubbles from. And this connected me back to a prayer that I had prayed 2 years earlier, and I was singing songs of "Breathe Upon Me, Breath of God," "He Touched Me," etc., those kind of songs. And this NDE seemed to be created. I know in my heart it was created to reflect what I had sang to that night that I had prayed while singing. And so he did touch me this night, and he did heal my soul. So then I noticed another light approaching off in the distance to the left of the body, off in the distance, and it was coming forward too. And as I was floating there in this bubble form, the light from the right came zipping into the room, and it grew up into the most beautiful light being I had ever seen. And this loving light that grew up in front of me was Jesus in all of his essence. And he radiated light. He was infused with light and had light rays coming out of his heart center. And I was glowing too. So through all those rays that were coming out, I could see his hair, and I could see the shape of his face. And he had a white gown on, tied at the waist with a rope, and he had the white sleeves, and he was in this, the welcome gesture. And I knew he loved me. He exuded unconditional love, and I felt the same love for him, so much so that I couldn't bring my mouth to speak, but I did think. I thought about, he held his hand out to me, palm up, in a gesture of "come take my hand." But when he did that, I thought of my daughter, Gina, because I wondered how she would be able to take my death. She's my youngest, and she and I are very close. I'm close to my boys too, but aren't around as much. And so that was the first one I thought of. And he said, "She'll be okay." So, hey, I was wanting to go home. Wanted to go home to my home in heaven. And so I was ready to go. And that's when the second light came. And that was God in his essence. He was a ball of light, and he had clouds bubbling around the outside of this ball of light. And it kind of looked like a cornucopia shape, but it was God in his entire essence. Now, whether this bubbling effect was the tunnel of the tunnel that comes to get us, or if we were in the tunnel. I believe we were in the tunnel. Jesus and I were already in the tunnel, and that light that had come forward had drawn both Jesus and I toward it, because Jesus's hair was going across his chin, and it was blowing toward the tunnel. So there was a movement there, and it had been drawing us in, and we were just on the precipice of heaven in God's light. So whether that was God's in his essence, it was God in his essence, but whether he was shining out of the end of the tunnel, or if it was him in his total energy, that part I don't know. I thought it was him in his energy, but the more I thought about it, it could have been his energy coming through the entrance to heaven. And then God held out his rainbow arms. He reached out his rainbow arms through that light, and he embraced me. And that's when he showed me the many moving moments of my life and told me to understand them. Now, that included my other near-death experiences and about 14, 15 others. I'm not sure how many it was, but I had to then understand all these moments. But because I still wanted to go, then the angels came to me, and they were white and gold energy. I could see their rays around my body. And they touched the back of my arms above the elbows because I transformed from the ball orb shape into the person's form, translucent white person. Then I was touched at the back of the elbows, and they lifted me high in the sky. And they showed me if I decided to go, what would happen with how I would be found in my bed. It was just a vision. But I did experience this too. But this hadn't happened. It was going to happen if I chose to go to heaven. And I saw that I became one with everything during that time frame, because I could see an ambulance coming up the road, and I felt like I was in the ambulance. I felt the bumps in the road. I could hear the crunch of the rocks as the tires rolled over them. And yet I was still high in the sky and could see my husband and I in the bed below. I had all perspectives, but I still wanted to go to heaven. So then all of a sudden I was back down in front of the light of God, just on the precipice of going in to heaven. And I was shown one more image. And that image was of my middle son, my middle child, Kurt. And when I saw his picture, I knew something was going to happen to him in the future if I wasn't there to stay with him. And now, how could I know that unless some of this was planned? And I know some of this was planned because when I was pre-kindergarten age, I told my mom I was going to die young. And when I told her I was going to die young, I was pre-kindergarten age. I had no concept of age. And then I had 3 visions go through my mind of 3 different ages. And those ended up being the ages of me at the times I was to have my near-death experiences. So I know my near-death experiences were planned. But then I was on the edge of going in to heaven. And when I saw Kurt's picture, I knew I couldn't go. So I told Jesus that I'm not ready to go yet, because I knew I had to stay. I love my son dearly. And whether or not they would have brought Philip, if I chose to go anyway, if they would have brought my son Philip up, I don't know. That would have been the next thing. But I made my decision to stay. And then I turned back into the blue spirit body, and I sat down into my physical form, sat my spirit butt down into the physical butt, and then I slipped a spirit foot into each one of the physical feet, and I grabbed my spirit knees and I rocked back and forth until I could get the momentum to lay down in Jan's body and snap back in, and then help her sit up and gasp for air. And all the while I did that, there was a message from heaven that's not only for me, it's for everybody. And this message was, love is the only thing that matters. And it kept echoing over and over again. Love is the only thing that matters, until I totally entered my body. And it's in my soul every day. What did I learn from all these experiences? I'll quickly recap some of them. And one of them is the superpowers of heaven are real, no matter what you call them. And God is genderless. He's a loving energy of light and unconditional love. Actually, he's the fabric of the universe, because he's everywhere. He's around us. He's in us. And our spirit is our own slice of the creator spirit. That was the blue energy that was leaving my body, and it is our soul. It is our slice of God's spirit. And that's why, he says that he lives life with us, because he really does. He and Jesus live life through us, through the spirit, his spirit, and they see what we see and experience life with us. And during this time, while I was out of my body, I had my thoughts and memories of who I was. And then certain moments in our life are preordained to occur, but not everything is planned. Just like a vacation, if you decide to go on one direction to see a site or a different direction, that's your choice. We have free will. But if there's certain things that are lessons for us, it will happen on whatever route we take. May manifest a little bit differently, but they will occur, like my near-death experiences were going to occur. If I had taken a different pathway, they may have been far worse. So that's why God says he guides us along the best pathway. He doesn't say there's only one pathway. And my first near-death experience, I learned about, we work with other souls, soul contracts. Second near-death experience, I discovered that prayers are answered. As I described, my invisible being that helped me, and when I called for help, and then in my when I had that severe accident, we are guided along our best pathway for our life, and our spirit will continue to nudge us back to the best pathway as we experience life, and that's through our thoughts or through subtle nudges. Maybe it's a gut feeling that we shouldn't be going in this direction, or we should get out of this situation. Listen to our spiritual guidance. And we're here for growth and learning, and our choices and reactions to difficult situations make us grow. I also encountered a divine elders. I was shown, that was one of the visions that I was shown, a divine council of elders, which orchestrate the lessons and how they will manifest. And it's up to us to grasp the education. And I know this because when I left them, I was chuckling and I said, that's so cleverly laid out for me to learn. So we may or may not be aware of what lessons we chose. We probably chose our lessons, but we weren't involved in the planning of how they will manifest. This council elders is. How can what I learned help you? Let's talk about that. Look back on the key moments of your life, like I had to, these moments that I was shown, and determine what problems seem to keep recycling, and then modify your choices or behaviors so that does not continue to happen if it's a difficult situation. And also, while looking back, you can just, kind of know in your heart who you have soul contracts with, like your children might have chose you, like my daughter chose me. I agreed to be there for my son. And I have no doubt that my other son, who's not in my book, was there for a specific reason too, but that was not one of the ones that were specifically shown to me. And Bob, who's in my life, was part of the council of elders that they brought into my life for a lesson plan for both of us. But what do they teach you? What are these people that have soul contracts? What do they teach you? Love, strength, compassion, how to forgive. There's so many different things, but every one of them are important. But it's very interesting to know what you're learning. Sometimes it's just to love your children dearly, to be a support to your husband. Everything is important. Also, we create our own reality through our thoughts and our decisions and our reactions to the situation, but especially difficult circumstances. So always look for the silver lining, not the storm. And heaven's guidance system that's inside of us doesn't have a voice box. It doesn't have a body. So it communicates through our senses and in our emotions. So be aware of the thoughts and senses. I touched on this a moment ago that connect you. Where do the thoughts connect you to? Might jog a memory of a particular person, and maybe that person has been needing something, and you can take them whatever it is that they need, and make a note of it and investigate for what heaven is trying to show you. Because there was time when I was looking for something that I had lost, and I couldn't find it. I looked everywhere. And I was coming down the steps, and my eyes were drawn to a pile of paper. And I ignored it, went to the kitchen and got what I wanted. And I was going to go back up the steps. And then my eyes were drawn to that again. And I thought, well, my eyes have been drawn to that twice. I need to look at that. And I did. That's where my item was that I needed to find. It's simple things like that we just need to be aware of and open our hearts and minds to their guidance. And it will help us throughout our life, because they guide us daily, not just in big decisions. And since I turned into an orb at one point in my third NDE. I find orbs very interesting. So when you take pictures with orbs in them, sometimes it is a film thing, but you can determine what it is. If those orbs are in there, you might even want to zoom in on the pictures so you can get a better look at the background. And you may see the orbs in there. These may be your guide. They may be lost loved ones. They could be angels. But guides are generally, I've noticed in the pictures that I've collected, they're usually behind you. And they could be off to your side. If you're sitting down, they could be in front of you. But a lot of times they're behind you. And they make their presence known if you're supposed to know. And they did for me. I actually saw several with my eyes. And finally, the most important message from heaven is love is the only thing that matters. And that's how we should live our lives. So keep that in mind as you go along your life journey. And I hope my NDEs have helped you. And before I go, they wanted me to show a book. So here's my book, Dying to See. And in this, I draw pictures of all my near-death experiences. And let me show you one that's very interesting. This is the first one. I hope you can see it. This is the music box lady. And this is who it ended up being. And each one of my near-death experiences have a picture in there. So I hopefully my story helps you in some way, and have a great journey. Bye.
Thanks for watching today's episode. Please don't forget to give us a like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.